In terms of the work we do today on ID combinations, I thought this particular topic might be really interesting to unpack. Is what are you most proud of about yourself? And then what are you most sort of burdened by? You know, if there was one thing you could change, what might that be? And I just thought, whilst we do a couple of other things first, I'll just show you this slide. So you might just want to reflect on it. And maybe as some of you start sharing, you might provoke thoughts for others. But as you share what it is that you're most proud about, me and some other black belts on the call can help you unpack maybe where that might be coming from and help you understand how the whole ID works together. That might be what's behind what you're most proud of. And then if there was one thing you could change about yourself, where does that sit? Is that to do with one instinct? Is that a combination? But I thought it might be an interesting way for you to get something really rich out of the session. If there's something you're most proud about, not only might you sort of articulate that for yourself, but particularly if you hear someone else talk about something that's with a similar idea, it might even provoke thoughts for yourself, you know. And then if there's one thing you could change or somehow do better, you know, what would that be? And that obviously means being vulnerable with the group, but hopefully some of you feel safe enough and secure enough to share at that level, not only for yourself, but for whatever value that gives to others. And I haven't actually thought about these for myself just yet, but I will as we go through it, and I'm happy to share as well. Thought about the questions, haven't thought about the answers. Let me just show you what's coming up. So next week is our first live interview, and the person I've got lined up is Jesper Anderson, and you'll love this guy, ID 3737. I think that's right. Actually, I should have checked that. It's certainly down, up. It might be 4727. But
you're right the first time.
I was right the first time. Thank you.
Yeah.
So when I thought about the people I've got lined up, and they were just people I thought would be really great for our group and you know, the larger ID audience, I thought about what are the common themes that I see. And the thing that really stood out to me was that their reputation for leadership is much bigger than them. You know, this isn't someone that would need to be sold to too many people. They've actually got a really significant shadow of leadership. Like people, when you look at their followership, the people around them, any noise that you hear about the person is just outstanding. And so I just unpacked that with these bullet points here, that when I think about it, they're people that are a walking, talking example of what being true to themselves really looks like. And not just at work or in sport, in the case of if they're an athlete, but across all facets of their life. And there's a real connection to how they live their life true to their ID, that authenticity. And people often talk about authentic leadership, but you know, I'm thinking about it in terms of authentic to their ID. There's one person I want to interview actually who actually hasn't done his ID yet. And it's some months away, and I'm going to be interviewing him in the next couple of weeks. But I'm really intrigued myself to learn more about what he's done, because his shadow is really significant. And then to learn about his ID and just see how much of that correlates, because of course there must be a correlation. When I think about the people I do know, if I rang Jesper now, I'll guarantee you he would tell you that his peak performance score would be a 9 or a 10. He's just there all the time. Long-term success in their field, and that includes, you know, navigating a whole bunch of challenges and different obstacles. And this point here about the number of people they influence in the most positive way that they're not even aware of in many cases is really significant. But generally their reputation, you know, if you raise that person's name, the only reaction you get from people is something really positive. I didn't set out for that to be the case, but when I looked at the people that I had lined up, these were the common sort of traits. So they're just really outstanding people. And I think it'd be very cool to hear more about their journey, their life journey. It's clearly one of success. It's in different fields. But Jesper is our first interview next Wednesday, Thursday, you know, same time. And I'll record that. And then I'll also unpack that interview afterwards. My intention is to turn it into a podcast afterwards, where I can then unpack a lot of things that they've shared and explain them in maybe a little more depth, depending on what gets covered. So that's an interview that should be really exciting, and I'd encourage you not to miss that one. And then when I send out the calendar, I'll show you who's lined up for each month for the next few months afterwards. All right. So let's just kick off with a protocol. Mark, this is we always check in, and we do this with the teams that we work with as well, to just sort of check how people are traveling and whether they're being true to their ID. So on this particular chart, the green arrow here represents your ID. This is you in stride. So if you're operating true to your 5573 self, in your case, if you have a plan, if you're working the plan, if everything, you've got your momentum, everything's on track, that would be you really in stride. And that's when people feel like, I don't even have to try. I mean, everything's just coming sort of more easily. I'm making great decisions. All these benefits at the top of the chart here follow when you are in stride. But there are times when we get pulled way off track or out of stride, and we experience not only the loss of these benefits, but we experience forms of stress and distress and even ill health as a result of being out of stride. So if 10 out of 10 is you right on this green line, absolutely shining, and a 1 out of 10 is right out to the side here, pulled way off stride, our question is, what's your number? We call it your PPI score, your peak performance indicator score. What's your number today? And just, I thought it might be interesting, given that we've got a relatively small group this time, what if in the chat you just shared your number? You just put there in the chat, what you are. And I just ask you to be honest and, just share with the group. You don't have to explain what's behind the number, but just share what the number is so that you can, we just see what it is overall. Thanks, David. Good scores. Okay. Grant, woohoo. So these are very interesting scores. So for those of you who don't get to see this on a broader basis too often, the average score that comes up is 6.3. And I say 6.3 meaning, when we collectively average them all. But, I'd say 5, 6s and 7s typically are the range for most people who have not done much work with ID or on self-awareness. When people are more aware, more self-aware, and have the insight and the strategies to live much more true to themselves, like you can see here, you start to navigate north of 8. So you got 8s and 9s, and in Grant's case, even a 10, which is just wonderful. 9 from David, just, 9 from Peter Kaiser, just fantastic. Gail as a 9, Doug as a 9. They're very high scores, guys. And, to have that level of awareness that you can navigate, particularly through a time like COVID like that, that's really fantastic. Not just for yourselves, but for all the people, your shadow, for the shadow that you're casting for the people around you, that is fantastic. So well done. Well done. The right shadows start to get cast from an 8. Grant, can I check in with you about your 10? Tell us about your 10.
Look, there's probably a lot of areas or a lot of things that sort of go into that 10. I think for me, I really feel like I'm at a point in my life where I don't need or want anything more than what I've got in my life. I've got a fantastic family. I feel like I'm on top of the world physically and mentally. And in particular, the 10 for me represents the ability to also deal with the stresses that are out of my control. And there's been a couple of those over the last 12 to 18 months. But I feel like right now, and I've had, maybe 1 or 2 in recent weeks that have come my way, it's my ability to stop, take a breath, process what's happened or happening, and then quickly move on. And, I think I've mentioned this in previous weeks. I've been really sort of looking into the concept of resilience. And I think my ability to build resilience and use the muscle of resilience has come about as a result of like these weekly check-ins. It's come about of, really searching deep in myself about, what do I stand for? What do I believe in? And developing a really strong desire and hunger for knowledge, and just wanting to know, to be at the top of my game, be the best version of myself. And I know there's a lot of cliches in there, but I'm not sure how else to describe it. I don't have the right words to describe it.
You've done a great job.
You're doing pretty good.
Yeah. What I heard was, one of the things that really stood out to me was when you want nothing more. You're at a point where there's this real satisfaction in just enjoying where you're at, who you are, who you're with. There's not that sense of, yearning for anything further. And yet that doesn't mean that you've arrived. There's still a part of you that can be ambitious and still wanting to improve and so on. But whatever comes is almost like a bonus, There's just a real degree of acceptance and fulfillment about where you're at. So, what I want to call out, Grant, is as a 70 in Verify, as someone who always sees a 5% factor somewhere, you know, that, yeah, but I could have done this. Like most people with your ID would typically rate themselves as no higher than a 9. So it shows a lot of growth on your part to even see that firstly, a 10 is possible. And then secondly, to own it for yourself, you know, and say, yes, this is me. I just remembered. Thank you for recording, Ian. But you know, that's a really great score for someone who's such a strong verifier. I mean, it's a great score for anybody, but I really applaud you for having the confidence and the awareness to even own it and put it out there, and then sort of sit in it and realize what it means for you. So stay, you know, it's like taking a photo of yourself in this moment, and you know what it feels like now. So that's what you strive for. And with your knowledge and your passion, I remember a conversation with you, you know, whatever it was, 6, 7, 8 months ago, where you're looking for this sort of development for yourself. And I'm just thrilled to death that it's been able to come about through this way from this whole community. It's awesome. And I can see that with these numbers from lots of other people as well. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Cheers.
Mark, tell us a little bit about your 5. What's behind your 5? Is it just, do you feel like something's missing for you?
Yeah, look, I think, so for starters, I've been following ID for the past 2 years, and it was only very recently that I thought, you know, I'm gonna sign up, I'm gonna do the test, and I found out about my score. And as I was doing the test, and I'm sure everybody could probably relate to this, but as I was doing the test, and as I got my score, it validated a lot of the things of, oh my God, that's actually who I am. The 5 really is a good representation of the crossroad in my life where I'm still trying to figure out what I should do next, and still trying to do the soul searching. You know, I'm going to use the word cliche that Grant mentioned, but there's still some uncertainties that, although I kind of know me now, there are still things that I'm still looking for. Quoting you two here, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Yeah, I think that's how the song goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I'm still in that path of searching, especially at the fact that I'm trying to switch careers as well. So in terms of my score being high in the completion area, you know, if I can't complete things, yes, I kind of feel down. So that's where the 5 is really. I feel like I always need to complete something.
So, well, thank you. And thank you for sharing. Let me give you a couple of key words as insights that might help you. You need a plan. You know, you always work best if you've got a plan. You need to be making progress on your plan. Like, it's not just about having it. It'd be nothing worse than having a plan and feeling like you can't do anything about it. So you need to be progressing towards the plan. But the really nice thing is, you don't need to be taking massive steps. You just need to feel like you're making some progress, because the power for you is in building momentum. Momentum is the other key word. So you need to make progress, but then build a momentum. You don't want progress where it's stop, start, stop, start. You want to feel like you can keep increasing and accelerating towards that plan. So, you know, it doesn't really matter how small you start. It's just that you start and you then build momentum and feel like you're making progress. But having that plan, so it gives you a sense of direction, is really the key. And there are people on this call, if you look at some of the numbers on the call, you know, like the ID numbers, like Richard's ID, Judy's ID, you can see that there are people who have got a complete drive as well, that could, you know, possibly help you with, like Ian's a 6 in complete. Reach out to some of these people. They'd love to help you with, you know, if they're in your shoes, how do they put a plan together? And you can leverage some of the different talents that are in the group.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else got anything they'd like to share or comment on to do with their number or what's going on for them right now?
I'll share something, Paul. I'm somebody who always believes there's a silver lining. I can always see the opportunity, or believe I can see the opportunities. But believing that there's an opportunity out there and believing that there's a silver lining somewhere is very, very different to actually sometimes bathing in its light. And I think that's something that's happened for me just the last week or so, that even though we were looking for certain things as a business,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, just a few things started to fall into place, which is really fantastic. Like
Wow.
it's taken me from an 8 to a 9, because now it's not just that the sun, not that I believe that there's sun there and it will shine through. It's just that now the sun is shining. Now we've just got to make it all happen. So it was good, really good.
So if you explain that through the lens of ID, what I hear is there's a lot more excitement, a lot more positivity, more opportunity, bigger possibilities sound like they are now on the horizon.
Yeah, I'm hesitating because I've always believed that that was all there. It's just that I couldn't reach out and touch it. It wasn't perfectly defined. Whereas now, and again, it's still not perfectly defined, but I can see that it is going to be defined.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Beautiful.
It's a distinction.
More real. Yep.
Yep.
That's really good. Yeah. So for those of you who are new and wanting to understand the combinations, so I at first heard the excitement of the 7 in verify, all of that. But really now I hear the 6 in authenticate, the more real something is. It's gone from being like an intention or a hope or a wish or conceptual, and now it's moved along where it's become more real. And that will always move the PPI number up for someone with David's ID.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just say one quick thing? And this won't surprise you. When you said before to Grant that you loved it to death, that he was making such strides with his development, my brain immediately went to, why death? Why not life? So that's just the authentication, the impact thing. So, and the importance of words.
Yeah.
Paul, I back up Judy on words, but I have noticed myself whenever you ask this question or I work with it, what I'm interested in is when a number comes to me, but I want to listen to what my voice just says right after that number. Like if I go, I'm a 10. And he goes, well, really? Are you 10? And when I did 8 this time, I went 8. And I go, yeah, let's be an 8. Let's have something to work forward to. So the voice that says, if you go around saying I'm a 10, and inside it goes, yeah, bullshit. It's like, I think the real number is when you commit to something and then find your reaction. Now you know where you're really at, that kind of thing.
Greg, that's great insight. That's really good. I'm going to use that myself. I think, I've often said to people, it's the conversations you're having in your head that people have said that your emotional state has everything to do with the conversations that you have in your head, not with everyone else. And I think that's really a great insight on how you can use this PPI experience and just the discipline of doing it, whether you do it with others or with yourself. It's the conversations that you're having. That's great, Greg. Thank you.
Paul, it's Gail. You asked what you see, 4229. You asked what you see as the strength of your ID. Now, I'm always 9 or 10 on the PPI. Since I understood ID and didn't feel that I was going mad all the time because I'm so different, it's so rare for me to be anything other than a 9 or 10. And I just put that as my ID, being everything's good. It's really hard for me to feel, even when things are crashing around me, I'm still ready. And while everyone else is stuck in the mud, I'm moving forward. And it's, as I say, I didn't used to be like that. This is all a function of knowing ID and understanding me. And while I've got the floor for 10 seconds, if there was one thing I could change, I'd love to be a 5 in authenticate so I don't always miss out on what people are talking about. And I have these conversations, particularly with my partner, who's a 7762, and he says, what I said was completely clear. And I'm going, no, it wasn't. And that is one thing I would feel would make my life easy, but then I wouldn't be me, so I'm happy as a 4229.
Thank you, Gail. You raise a good point. I actually was doing a workshop this week for a client, and they were making the comment about COVID. They said, like, this, it's all very well to be in stride, but there are things in life that occur that just, are really challenging times that pull you way out of stride, like what we've gone through this year in 2020. And I said to them, well, I'm sorry, but I'm a pretty hard taskmaster when it comes to this stuff, because the people who are really self-aware have an ability to know how to navigate even the most turbulent times. And they might vacillate a little bit. They might drop from a 9 to an 8, but they don't drop to a 4, And if something happened that really blew them out to a 4, it'll probably last about 30 minutes and before they'd be, getting themselves back to a really good score. So Gail's point's really right. It's not that people can only live at a 9 or 10 when everything's good around them. It's more they have an insight and a self-awareness to recalibrate even the toughest, challenging situations and see the good in them. I'm thinking of someone that gets made redundant, and for some people, they're devastated for weeks and months, and it's the undoing of their life, their relationship. And there are other people that before they've almost left the office of the person giving them that notice, they're like, you know what, the good thing about this is, and even if they can't see what it is, they know to go looking for that and convert it into that. So that's what you're hearing from someone like Gail as a 9 in improvise, is just whatever comes along, she's learned enough about herself to be able to convert any of those, challenging or negative, what would otherwise be negative situations, into looking for the opportunity and keeping yourself more in stride. And that to me is the real power of self-awareness. Some people have said, I thought it was that by being self-aware, I'd know to find the right roles and find the right relationships, that by matching up, I'm then more in stride. I'm like, well, yeah, that would be great in theory. And some people do find, a much better fit for their talent and so on. But we all face challenges each and every day, regardless of what role or relationship we're in, that could really, pull us right off track. But the value is in knowing who you are and how to get back there really quickly. And that's what happens for the self-aware people. It's not that they don't get the same distractions that others get. They don't go off track for very long, or they don't go off track too far. Okay, has anyone got anything they would like to share? Have you been thinking about our discussion for today about what are you most proud of? And I don't mean about your ID here, I mean about yourself. Because don't have to necessarily mention it related to ID. We can do that. I just wonder, when you think about yourself and how you live your life. I talked before about inviting some of the most authentic leaders, into our world to interview them about their journey. If one of those people was you, and we were talking about what are you most proud of, what is it that comes to mind for you? It might be a business thing, it might be a personal thing, might be a relationship thing. What is it that stands out to you? And then what is it what is something that you would most like to change, or that you feel you carry with you as a bit of a burden through life? We all have them, just like we all have a genius factor. We all have a burden as well, that, that thing that I wish we could change. Just remember, if you want to share, I think almost everyone's on mute, so make sure you take yourself off mute.
Paul, if I can just share one of the things that it is aligned to my ID, and it's about when I'm working with my clients, they always tell me that I can help them see the wood through the trees. So they usually come to me with complex problems or just a load of stuff that they're dealing with. And after a short period of time, I can pretty much pinpoint the 2 or 3 things that are the key issues, and then just drill down on those, rather than getting distracted by the 20 other things that people are just getting hooked up in or getting confused with. So that's I'm very proud of being able to do that, and that's something that that my clients seem to really value. The other thing is the other thing that I wish I could change, and I do, but it's my improvised drive. And rather than just accepting what is, I always want to improve things all the time. So every time I pick something up, I want to improve it and I want to do something different. So I'm really having to learn to just let go and recognize that unless I'm adding true extra value to what I've just picked up, why don't I just leave it as it is, because I've already spent a lot of time and energy on putting it together. So rather than having to want to improve it again and again and again, it's just like, stop that. So I'm learning, but it's taken many years.
Okay. They're interesting comments, Joe. Very interesting. Particularly the second one about the things to want to change, because in the same way that you've got a drive to want to, improve things or make them bigger and better, you've also got a strong drive to just accept things. So I'm wondering where that fits for you. Like your two in verify is the drive to just accept and to not improve, just accept what it is, not judge it, not improve it, not change it. So I'm wondering where that little tug of war happens for you.
It does come. I believe it comes to impact. It comes down to wanting to make an impact and just make sure that every time I'm doing something, I'm not just turning out just the same, because you go to places, you maybe hear people do presentations or do talks or have a conversation even. And for me, it's not enough to have the same conversation. I love to add extra value and to make an additional impact and to make sure that the interaction that I'm having with that person gives them another piece of insight or another ability to take something else away. So that's where those two drives, I guess, combine very strongly together to the benefit generally. And that's what I put that down to, unless anyone else can see something I'm not seeing.
No, that's really good. That's really good. And then the thing that occurred to me with your first comment about what you're really proud of, about helping people sort through the forest from the trees, and identify what the key issues are. I can see how your ID sort of cuts all the crap and gets to what the real issues are. But I would suggest to you there might be one other thing that happens as well, given your ID, and you may not see this yet, but I think you will. Is your ability to not only identify those things, but present them in a way where they take action, because your ID is a real catalyst ID, and it's like saying the thing and even saying it in a way that motivates them to take the one step that is the no point of return step. So it's not just that you give them an idea and they go, oh, thanks, Joe, that's a good idea, and then nothing changes. It would be your ID to present it in such a way that you instigate some movement, and that movement means they can't actually go back from that now, even though you don't give them the whole plan and all of that, you make something up. And so imagine I'm talking to you about something, you go, Paul, let's get them on the phone and we'll call that person now. And you dial the number and you start the conversation, then you walk away, but the point is you've opened up that channel for change to occur, because that's what your ID really does. So I think of it as that addendum to what you just shared.
Yeah. And that's very, very true. And I've always called myself a catalyst or a channel for change, because there's no doubt that when people do have conversations, it's exactly what happens. They do something, or I'll actually just take their hand, not literally, but metaphorically, and just help them make that first step, because taking action is really important to me. And my husband's just sitting across here and he'll tell you that that's exactly what happens. So, yeah, it very much is about, okay, we've talked about it now. What are we going to do about it? So, yeah, thank you. Thanks for the insight.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Oh, can I suggest something that when Joe was speaking, I thought, wow, which drive just said that? And I was thinking, while we're doing this sharing of what the topic you've given, if people could listen for what drive might have just said that sort of thing, so we can start seeing how the combos play with each other. You just did it by breaking it down. But I invite everyone to go, what just said, I need to cut through the crap kind of thing. Well, you go, oh, the 7 got to be, and then and when she says I'm constantly improving or something, I'm going, yeah, but you're 2 except, that kind of thing. So I think it's a great opportunity to play combos while we're also doing the deep dive into people's issues.
Right.
Cool.
Thanks, Greg. While I think of it too, last week I said to you, with combinations, there can even be a single word that combines all drives. And when we hung up from the call, it wasn't minutes before somebody used the word, and they were like a down, up ID, so avoid, verify, authenticate, avoid, complete, and improvise. And they used the word obliterate. And I went, oh my God, that is a down, up word. Like, it's got that authenticate, real, you can picture obliterates, like smash everything. It's a really physical word. The avoid, authenticate was, it's a one-off, like it's just like bang, done, everything's wiped. It's got that impact of the improvise, and it was just like no mucking around of the avoid, verify. I could just see the whole thing playing out with one word. So I haven't heard another word since this in the last week, but that was a great example to me of, you know, and then look, there might be a way of obliterate matching the opposite ID too, but it was just that I could see in the way the person was using it, that it was a word that totally represented all four of their drives. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. All right, anybody else got something they're proud of or something they'd most like to change? Judy.
Well, when I took the ID assessment, it verified something that I'd wondered about my whole life, and I can put it together with the question, what I'm most proud about. I love the fact that I have such incredible recall and memory. And I imagine that it connects to my passion, willingness, and ability to be an incredible listener. I love that about myself. All of that.
Just listen to you, Judy. I think it's so cool that firstly, you know that about yourself, but most people wouldn't feel, they'd feel like they couldn't say that as, you know, clearly and as strongly and own it like that. And in addition, that everyone on this call can go, you know, kudos to you, Judy. Like no one thinks you're just big noting yourself. You're just being really clear about what a strength that you have and what you do, what difference you can make with that in the world. How cool is that? I think that's fantastic. Well done.
And a lot of my comfort with being able to say that in the way that I'm saying it is the energy of this group.
Well, and you contribute a lot to that. I can tell you, we comment on the fact you weren't here last week. We all noticed.
And I missed being here last week.
Yeah.
And being on my couch was a better place for me to be last week.
Well, that's right. That's right. Sometimes you just got to restore. So, you know, you're absolutely right, though, with you being such a strong completer. So you're a 70 in complete. So 7, Mark, just so you understand, because I'd say, did you change your ID score, Mark? 5574? Was it 5573 there before?
Yes, so it's actually 5574, and when I put in 5573, it's because that's actually my credit card number. I know it from the top of my head. And it resembles my credit card.
Yeah.
OMG.
It would help me a lot if you can give me the rest of the digits and the expiry date. I'll have a little.
I'll give you a call later, mate.
So it's interesting because your ID has a lot of similarities with Judy's. You know, if you're sitting there, Mark, thinking, oh my God, that's me as well, or it would be great to talk as confidently about myself. Judy's a great example of that. But when someone has a 7 and they don't have a strong avoid number that's a 3, 2, or 1, it means that 7 can be even stronger. It's like it takes off. And so we call that a 70. Grant's got that in verify. David's got that in improvise. So you can see in fact here we don't have a 70 in authenticate, but whenever we've got Greg Meyer on the call, it's like having a 70 in authenticate. So Judy, that's wonderful. And, you know, it really is true that the recall that you bring, you know, the memory, I think it is probably one of your greatest strengths, but you talked about listening, and you taught me, you may not realize, about the empathy factor of the avoid verify score.
Yes.
I probably will always remember that time when you were sharing a problem and we didn't solve it, but someone listened to you and you felt empathized with, and it made a massive difference to you. And I'm sure in your listening, it's the empathy that you give to others that probably is the value of your listening, not just what you retain and recall for later.
Mm-hmm.
And so to Greg's point, that's because of the 4 in verify. I'd also suggest maybe as the 4 in improvise, it just sits in the moment. It's not trying to think about the future. So that people feel like you're truly present. Like if you're listening to me, I probably feel like you're really with me, experiencing my feelings, really interested in what I'm about. And you don't necessarily need to tell me anything to change it. It's just like being with me on that journey, you know? Yeah, huge. So that to me is how the combination would work, but you're right, with such a strong complete drive, it would be an exceptional strength. And in fact, the first thought when you were sharing it, my mind went to, for people with your ID, you know, like strong completers, where that is such a strength, who get dementia or Alzheimer's, it must be the cruelest thing to happen to them. Because if that's their greatest strength and that gets taken away, it must be the most horrible thing to do to somebody, you know? So I hope for you, you get to live with this for a long time, that this is the gift you take with you all the way through.
Thank you. Now, the one thing that I wish I could change is what, and I haven't figured this out, and that's what stress does to me. See,
Yep.
when something stresses me, then I either get sick or I lose my direction and I can't complete, and it's downhill from there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you've got very good self-awareness, because for me too, when I see a lot of completers, and Mark, you might relate to what Judy's saying, you know, that it's all very well to see the flip side of the same coin, Judy, is you're a planner. And planner means you're thinking to the future, you know, you're planning, but planning, the same word is worrying. And so you're a worrier, and that brings a natural level of stress. If you can't see where all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are going to fit together and be in harmony, it brings a stress. And I would say to you, it's a drive that it's probably the biggest burden for all of completers like that is, you know, normally it's the stress of not being able to see the direction, the plan, how they're going to be able to complete it.
Yes.
Can I just add, I mean, besides the stress level, for me, it's actually the frustration, but I can definitely relate to what Judy was saying. I feel like she was speaking on my behalf too. I think you're my long lost twin or something. I don't know.
We're gonna connect, Mark.
But yeah, look, I think for me, it's definitely the frustration. You know, I've worked with a lot of organizations where, you know, my task is really to solve problems. And part of solving problems is basically figuring out what is a problem. And when people can't tell you what the problem is, but then you're tasked to solve it, you know, there is that tendency. I don't find myself stressed. It's more frustration, really. Because how can you complete a project if you don't know what's going on? So, but that's part of the challenge.
Okay, thank you.
So Paul, I might continue on with the complete one. And I think something I'm proud of is being able to connect different people that have got things in common that probably a lot of other people, you know, wouldn't even recall or know, you know, oh, that guy would be good, he'd work well with you, and that sort of stuff. I really love doing that. That's
okay. That's really
something
good.
And I think it probably goes a bit to Judy and the a good memory stuff, but I think the use complete guys in a team are the ones that hold the corporate memory for the team. And I that's something I think I'm proud of. I think as well, probably a persistence at things, just you know, not giving in and seeing something through. But that probably comes to the what would you change from a knowing when to cut your losses and say, you know what, I should have stopped on this a little while ago, you know. Yeah. So yeah, no free lunch.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you. I'll comment on a couple of things you've raised I'd like to comment on. First of all, when you talk about connecting people, the word that I have heard people say with the complete drive, and I'm thinking of maybe this fits even more so with your ID, is they love being a resource, you know, a source of resource for others. Does that fit for you, Richard?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. To me, that's more than just connecting people. It's actually having, it's like having this repertoire of stuff, you know, and it's like, if you need something, come talk to me, because it's whether I know someone or I've got something, but I'll be able to help you move forward somehow. We'll figure it out. But I've got a resource. You know, you pride yourself almost on having the resources to help people. That's what I hear. And one of those is being able to connect people. But I think it's only one dimension. So I wondered whether there was maybe a bigger a bigger component to this about being a resource for people.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I had an example of it as recently as yesterday afternoon as a 7553 general manager at a mine, you know, having some challenges, and just in our conversation was able to come up with some specific solutions as to who could get him out of his pickle, and he was pleased with it. I thought, wow, it's cool. I like doing this.
Yeah, good on you. Good on you. You also made.
Can I add something for the up complete, please? Is what Richard wouldn't say this necessarily, but he doesn't give up, you know, on tasks sort of thing. He doesn't give up on people. He sees people that other people may have written off, and I know of stories in the mines where someone he had to sack, and the way he did it, I've seen him come up to Richard and years later, and as best mates, going, boy, you know, when you called me and I left that job, it turned me around. I really want to thank you for always being there for me. So he, even when he had to let go of people, he did it in a way where they grew. So I think that drive is a custodian. Maybe it's a combo with the yellow down, because it has to have legs. Things have to last. But he does. People often say the completes, you know, finish a task and don't give up on a task, but they don't give up on people. And Ian's the same. I know that I can go to Ian with anything, and he's gonna look after me as well as look after the task. And everyone's got to have some strong completers in their life, I reckon.
You made another comment too, Richard, about team, about, you know, being the corporate memory in a team. I actually also want to expand on this, because what I've found is that the most high-performing teams, well, you can't be a high-performance team without having a completer on the team. Now, the only proviso there is the completer's got to be a completer. Like, there's no point being a completer who hides. But if they're a completer that contributes their complete mindset to the team, you know, the completer drive mindset to the team will shine. But teams operate best when they operate as a completer-driven team, you know, where there's structure, there's routine, there's a consistency, there's accountability, everybody's aligned. All of those components, you've only got to think of a sports team to see how true that is. You've got to have that type of structure. And I've found teams that don't have the completer on the team, who's an assertive completer, that they just never get there. But if you've got a good completer and a strong completer, and you've got diversity, they're the you know, initial ingredients, at least, for a high performance team. But the completer is more than just corporate memory. It's like the essential glue that makes the team or gives it the chance to become a high performance team. If anyone's ever found a high performance team that didn't have a completer on it, I mean, we'd have to know their IDs to do that. I'd really love to hear it, because I've been on a mission to find that for the last probably 3 to 4 years, and I can't find one. But every team I've found where there is a completer who brings that energy to the team, they've had a magnificent journey. So just good, an insight for everyone there. But it's beyond just corporate memory. It's actually the integral component. So it's almost like what I was saying before about being the resource for the team. That's, you know, it really is key there.
So what I'm hearing is another strength that a completer might acknowledge is a knowingness of how huge the contribution is that they make to the team. Acknowledging that and valuing that.
Yeah, it's a challenging one, Judy, because on the other hand, a completer doesn't want to stand out. You know, they want to fit in. And so they don't want to be seen as any more significant than anybody else, because I would imagine, I'm talking for you here, but
right.
There's a really strong, and it's not that they're overly humble. It's just that you don't want to, it's all about the team. It's all about the family. It's all about the group. It's not about the one piece of the jigsaw puzzle, which might be you. It's about how the harmony works for everybody. So in that context, they're not going to be bigger or better than anyone else. But I think the key word I hear completers say is they are integral, you know, vital, like the keystone of a pyramid. Yeah, that's a great comment Greg's just made in the chat, that, you know, and the key word I would say, and in fact, Tom Fallon, a completer friend of mine, said the key word is together. You know, it has to be together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't address one of the comments Judy made that I know Mark related to was around stress. So you shared it. I certainly agreed with you. I just want you to know, I don't automatically have the solution for you, Judy. Or not so much the solution, but a solution. Like, how do you, are there some insights that help completers live without stress? You know, two that come to mind are regrouping regularly, like, and the more pressure you're under, the more you regroup. And the second one is exercise. Exercise is a great release. I was just talking to my son yesterday about, you know, going through COVID, are we doing extreme? Like when the pressure builds up, and in this case, the stress builds up, you know, if you said to somebody you're getting a massage every month, once a month, that would not raise eyebrows. That you know, plenty of people get a massage once a month. If you said you're getting massage once a day, people might sort of go, whoa, you know, what are you, an elite athlete or something, you know? But that is what elite athletes do. And I think, what are we doing that's putting ourselves under a whole lot of pressure? And what are we doing at the extreme end to combat the level of stress? And is it that you've got to exercise a lot more? Is it that you've got to regroup more often? Like, is it every few hours you need to regroup as opposed to once a week regrouping? I don't know if there are other strategies that some of the black belts are aware of, but I would say whatever they are, you might also need to consider doing them more regularly when the stress is greater.
You've hit on two things there, Paul, for the completers I live with. One is find when it seems like there's something going down they haven't got control over, and they don't know when it's going to land, and it's out there, out of your control, Judy, right? I can't fix this sort of thing yet. It's waiting for others. Is find something you can fix, can control, can complete. And in one case, in Bear's case, it seems like a distraction. She'll go build this, make that, fix this. But it actually does give the drive a sense of, closure and so forth. And exercise is one of the most powerful ones, getting fit and doing the things that you can control. I can control my legs and my arms and my yoga and so forth. And I think that if all else fails, it's what do I do when I don't know what to do? Finish something and exercise in some way. But again, you guys are great because you can do routines. Whereas me, it's got to occur to me unless someone's got a gun to my head, right? So that's one of the things you can control. And I think it's a gift you bring to the rest of us. Like Richard runs every morning, rain or shine, you know, it's that sort of thing. And it's like, oh, well, it can be done. A human can do this. You know?
And actually, I'll just jump in there tack on from Greg. One of the things that I find too, because we talk about the worry with the complete, is really shrink your planning horizon. Because I mean, the use complete, we plan so far in advance, you know, and it's the worry for what we've got to do next week and all these tasks we can't control. Shorten your planning horizon. Like I find if I get overstressed, I'll come back. I just got to get this. I'm going to do this today. I'm just focusing on today. I'm going to get this done, and I'm done. I'll worry about tomorrow. And it is consciously shortening that planning horizon, because then I'll deal with tomorrow. But it's really chunking it down to, I think, even to Joe's point, to such an extreme for us. And it's a coping mechanism, but again, it able to build a momentum, finish things, get things done, and then it starts the momentum kicks back in again.
That's awesome. I mean, so I've heard 4 things there, Judy and Mark, for that matter. One is regrouping. The other is complete something, exercise, and shrink your planning horizon. And when I think about those and the completers that I know, they are great strategies to help you manage stress.
Thank you so much to everyone.
Guys, I'm conscious of the time, and out of respect for everyone's time, it might be the right time to close our webinar today rather than share more. If anyone's got anything that they've been wanting to share, maybe hold it over to next week, or actually 2 weeks, because we'll use most of next week with the interview with Jesper. So hopefully you can make next week, and I promise you a very insightful and fun experience next week, and then we can also unpack it the week after and digest, you know, any of the nuggets that you think are particularly relevant, and continue on from today's discussion if there's some things on your mind then as well. Otherwise, thank you for being here today. It's always great to see you. Thanks for lighting my week up as well. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week, guys. Take care.
Thank you.